name tags right here. All right. Hey, Facebook Live. Hope you are doing well today. We have a full house here on Be the Talk podcast. This is going to be so much fun, and we are going to get started here with Roy Horowitz in just a moment. Chad and Sandy, if you can wave, because we are live right now on Facebook. So if you haven't already tagged me on Facebook, be sure to do so that we can get the message out. Everything we're doing on Facebook right now is so that we can promote and help everybody who is going to be guests of mine today defeat the Facebook algorithm and blast their message to the world. And we can only do that with your help. So you need to wiggle your finger over the share button so that you get these messages out. So it looks like Sandy is reconfiguring her microphone because we haven't heard anything from her yet. And we are going to escort you, Chad, over to the green room, and we'll be back with you in about 15 minutes or so. Roy, how are we doing today?
Fantastic. How are you, Nathan?
I am doing well, and it's so good to see you because we had you slotted last week, and sometimes it's a little bit tricky with the tech. So thank you for your tenacity and jumping back in here. And what I need to do is actually get your bios formatted correctly in my spreadsheet here so that they are ready to go. All right. So let's see. I am going to check. Your title is called your talk is called The Value of Wearing a Different Paradigm. Roy Horowitz led the Ladakh expedition, a Hong Kong-based youth expedition to become the youngest expedition to summit Parangala Pass at 18,000 plus feet in the Indian Himalayas. Before the expedition, Roy served as a head instructor in the counterterrorism school, and we have a LinkedIn link for you. Anything else with that? Did I read your bio? Okay, that's what I got.
That's perfect.
All right. Very good. Let's check the levels here in just a moment. If you can give me a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All right. We are about even right there. Any questions before I hit the recorder here?
No, let's go.
Let's do it. All right. We are live in 3, 2. We are live with Roy Horowitz. Roy, are you ready to talk?
I am.
Roy Horowitz led the Ladakh expedition, a Hong Kong-based youth expedition to become the youngest expedition to summit Parangala Pass at over 18,000 feet in the Indian Himalayas. Before this expedition, Roy served as a head instructor in the counterterrorism school. Roy Horowitz, welcome to the talk.
Thank you, Nathan. It's great to be here.
Your talk is called The Value of Wearing a Different Paradigm. And to show this, at the beginning, you show a picture of a bunch of linebackers in the NFL practicing their ballet skills. And you say, how does this possibly make sense? It's because the paradigm works. And when you're a linebacker, it helps to be able to dodge instead of getting clobbered. And it takes a different paradigm to be able to make sense of those differing ideas and pictures. So, Roy, please take us behind the talk.
Yeah, sure. I guess the story of the expedition starts about 20 years ago. I was an Israeli kid growing up in Hong Kong as an expat. And I talk a little bit about this in the talk, that it's a very theoretical world. So Hong Kong kids are very, very studious. They're very hardworking, but all within the confines of extracurricular activities that will get them into a great university or getting great grades. And when I was 18, I decided to move back to Israel to serve in the Israel Defense Forces in our military here. And that experience was so contrasting with everything I experienced as a kid in Hong Kong. You know, the perfect metaphor is I'd spent 18 years being taught about the different strokes, how there's breaststroke and there's backstroke. And then I joined the military, and I was thrown into the ocean out of a helicopter, right? And years, 3.5, 4 years after I left Hong Kong, I returned to Hong Kong, and I could see what that experience had done to me. Specifically, how valuable it is to do something so different from what you're used to. And at that time, a good friend of mine, Chris, who just graduated from university at the time, we had dinner a certain night, and we were laughing how we were such wimps back when we were in high school. We were in high school together in Hong Kong, and how we both, before we met again, did very, very physical things. So I obviously went into the military and the special operations. And Chris went on to do a few expeditions. He had a friend pass away, and he started doing a few expeditions that were around raising money. He cycled across Canada. He walked across the Gobi Desert. And we were just talking about how valuable it is to do something so different, so physical, so being thrown in the water for someone as technical and theoretical as a Hong Kong kid. And we thought, how amazing would it be if we could give this experience to kids that are now in Hong Kong, and then will never join the military or do expeditions. And that was how the expedition was born.
This is very interesting because even though it happened 20 years ago, with everything that we're seeing in terms of children and the screens that we all have, and how we're getting less social and less emotionally intelligent, what you did is absolutely huge. And the way that you set it up in your talk, I had no idea. I mean, I didn't pay enough attention to know it was 2 decades ago. I thought it was actually more recent than that. And
just to be specific, it started 2 decades ago because we were kids in Hong Kong 2 decades ago. The expedition itself was in 2014.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't that long ago. Okay, so it was 5 years ago, the actual, and this was 15 years. Okay, so
20 years
great.
in the making, you could say.
Great. Okay, 15 years in the making, and what a perfect, maybe a little bit risky, a little bit controversial, but anecdote to you show all of these empty desks or filled desks in a slide, just packed together. The Hong Kong experience, which is probably a New York on steroids experience, where you've just got super social interaction, but also isolation because of a big, big city. And the grit, the emotional fortitude, the teamwork, the collectivism that you need to be able to summit a major Himalayan pass, that's not the kind of thing that you get in the big city where we're all together fighting for ourselves in collective isolation. So what a great, I think, an antidote for a lot of the ills that we have right now, as long as it's being led well. So my question to you, kind of cutting through the story and everything else, what did you have to do as a coach and a leader and basically the guardian of this expedition with a bunch of kids that were book smart, but not necessarily grit smart or mountaineering smart, or just were, by your own admission, the whole point was to throw them into an environment they'd never been in before? What did you have to do to make this a success, Roy?
Yeah, it's a great question. The truth is less than you might think, because there are so many things that overlap. Because a nerd has grit, but he channels his grit on a desk with a pen in hand, right? And so does an athlete, right? He also has grit, but he does it maybe in shorts out on the track. And we didn't create grit, we didn't create a lot of new skill sets, but we translated them, I would say, more than anything. But of course, there was also a technical preparation. So first of all, we had to choose people who were suitable. And I would say the vast majority of participants were athletes of some sort. They were obviously students, but they were participating. They were representing Hong Kong in triathlons or biathlons or cycling and so on. And so the first of all, a selection of people who could make that shift from classroom to mountain. That's number one. And number two, people who could together work in a cohesive manner and empower one another. That was the first stage. And then after it was just, getting them physically fit enough. We were sponsored by Fitness First, which is sort of like Equinox here in the States. Fitness First is pretty huge in Asia, and they were our sponsors. And so they helped us with nutrition and our training regime and so on. And the kids were training 5 days a week with oxygen deprivation masks. I mean, we were very serious in our physical preparation. And obviously, a lot of kind of hiking on the weekends just to get them ready. But yeah, less than you would think. When you have the raw skill set, the transfer is easier than you would think.
Well, it sounds to me like you went in very, very intelligently, and you had specific criteria that you were vetting for. Yeah. And if you hadn't done that, it would probably be a lot more difficult. So I think that's a really great lesson learned for any leader, anyone who's pioneering a new thing. Make sure that you're being selective if you have the creative freedom to do that, and then start equipping the people for what they need. And in your case, oxygen deprivation masks and everything else that you need to get up to 18,000 feet. I know for me, the highest I think I've ever been is around 14,000 on a mountain or two, not climbing, but just hanging out. So very, very powerful. Yeah. Any final words of wisdom based on this experience before we pivot over to the Blitz round?
Not really. Let's go into the Blitz round.
Not really? Okay. Well, hey, Talk Universe, we've been enjoying this conversation with Roy Horowitz. We are going to be right back in just a moment with the Blitz round. And it's time for the Blitz round. We are talking with Roy Horowitz about the preparation and performance of his recent talk. Roy, are you ready?
Yep.
All right. I'm going to ask you a series of either or questions. First is, were you invited to speak or did you apply?
I was invited.
Were you a memorizer? Were you an improviser? Were you a blender?
Both, but more memorization. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what's a tip, tool, or technique that can help?
Starting with emotion. So my performance coach would sit with me, and that first sentence, that transition from silence into speaking, we would feel it. We would do it without words, just with our bodies, such that when we actually started speaking, we were already there, we were already present, we're warming up, such that the second sentence is full of of emotion, but the first one's already at full speed.
As a performer, that's one of the things that you learn to do, when you get more and more seasoned. It's not about the memorization. It's not about the technicality of what you're doing. It's about conveying emotion. And the funny thing is, once you make that switch, I know from my own experience, it really helps with not just the memory, but the execution, so that you're conveying that emotion in a very meaningful way, instead of just coming off as maybe technically gifted, but a little bit sterile. So I love that you said that. Any other thing on the speaking with emotion, and was that a natural thing for you, or did you need to be coached to speak with emotion?
I think it's funny to answer the question like this, but probably both. I'm a very passionate person. I'm Israeli. I'm very passionate in how I am, but I'm also extremely cerebral. And so it's very easy for me to tell you exactly what happened and just go through the bullets. And so all I needed was a way to transition me into my very emotive self. And so that was what that exercise was for. Yeah.
And for you, how long was it for you, or did you resist that change, or did you see the purpose of it and try to adapt to it from the beginning, or did you resist it?
No resistance, no.
All right. So the cerebral part of you saw the logic of speaking with emotion, in other words.
I was much more comfortable just speaking, completely from logos, but I also understood the value, the merit of speaking to you from here. And so I, moved in that direction.
What was the most painful part of your talk that you had to cut out?
Nothing. I put it all in there. Yeah. it took some time to make sure that everything was cohesive and connected. It was quite difficult to, connect ballet and American football to, climbing a mountain. I think that was the most painful part, even though it was not cutting out, but connecting.
Yeah, well, connecting. I mean, so what that tells me, Roy, is you had a process orientation from the beginning. You knew that you only had a very short amount of time, and so you were crafting this and cutting. And as you were doing that, you were also making the connection between the ballet football player and this scaling the Himalayan pass and working and honing that. And that's really important, because that doesn't happen in 1 or 2 or 3 sessions. That can take dozens of revisions to really make smooth. So congratulations for that.
Thank you. I was actually given 20 minutes to speak, the full 20 minutes. And I said, I do not want to speak for 20 minutes. People are not going to click on it. It's too much. I'm not that smart. I'm not that important. So it was key for me to be able to, first of all, come in with something light with the ballet, and then give the heart of the story, which was, getting nerds to climb a mountain, and then finishing with something that is digestible. The metaphor of the toy box where you have to put different, pegs and holes and so on into these circular or rectangular molds.
Yeah, well, we've been enjoying this blitz round with Roy Horowitz. His talk, again, is called The Value of Wearing a Different Paradigm. And if you want to check that out, you can go to our show notes page at bethetalk.com. We will have a link to it, or you can type it into YouTube. You can also go to our show notes page to link in with Roy. We are going to have a link to his LinkedIn profile right there in the show notes. And we'll be back in just a moment with Roy Horowitz. Final word of advice for You Talk Universe. And we're back with Roy Horowitz. It is time for the final word of advice. What is it?
This is for people who are giving TED Talks, specifically. Yeah, less is more, 100%. I'm going to remember 20% of what you tell me. And so every word needs to count. Every word needs to be there for a reason. No superfluous sentences.
Less is more, Talk Universe. Roy Horowitz, thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
No problem. This is great. Thank you.
All right, that's a wrap. Thank you so very much.
Are we offline, Nathan?
We are on Facebook Live, so we're still broadcasting, and that's going to continue. I am going to bring Chad and Sandy back. And it looks like we got a little bit of social love from my friend Amy, who says, I just had an aha moment, Roy. Her aha moments are pretty epic. I can just tell you that. So thank you for doing that. Oh, my gosh. Now, Sandy, the question that we're all wondering, can we hear you? And we can't hear you. We still can't hear you. Here is, now this is going to be a super backup option for Sandy. Depending on your availability or whatever. If we need to, I'm going to be in the 10 o'clock hour. I have a few interviews. And then if we need to, we can hop offline, go to a different platform, and I'll just record your episode then, if that works for you in your timeline. Because obviously you're being very tenacious, and it's just not doing what we want to do. So, but we love having you around. It's just we come into these issues from time to time. And Roy, we were right there with Roy last week. I wasn't able to see Roy, and then I didn't see him anymore, probably because of some scheduling issues or whatnot. So anyway, you are welcome to stick around as we jump in here with Chad, and I'm going to escort Roy back there, and you as well, Sandy. Chad, how are you doing, man?
I am doing above average for a Wednesday. Doing pretty darn good.
All right, above average for Wednesday. Yeah. All right, well, cool. I am sitting a little higher than you, and you are about 50%, which is kind of the Oompa Loompa range without trying. I don't know if that's offensive to Oompa Loompas that I say that, but if you actually made it, you actually were doing.
So I can't grow taller. How about that?
There you go. Okay.
Beautiful.
I'll match you right there. And standing helps with the energy. I probably should be standing myself, but I just got in the habit of sitting down. But anyway, it's all good. Chad, let's go into Chad Littlefield is the co-founder of Me and We Inc., an organization whose mission is to gently eradicate small talk to create conversations that matter. Forbes calls Chad a global expert on building trust and connection in teams. I love it, and I'm hesitating because there are weird little characters that somehow there. So when I said Anne, it actually looks like Alan. So I'm going in, and
it's actually We and Me Inc.
We and Me Inc.
Me,
yes, We and Me Inc. Yeah, and I've got these weird little special characters that are just a little bit weird right there. We and Me, We and .me
is the website.
Yeah. We and .me. Okay. Yeah. Which is good. All right. So
ChadLittlefield.com works as well, if that's easier for you.
ChadLittlefield.com. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Very good. Well, any questions before I hit the go live, or though I hit the go live button, but the recorder button.
Right I mean, might be talking about asking powerful questions at one point or another. So is it okay if
that's what this is for.
I turn back and ask you something?
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Cool.
Yep. Now, do you have, I don't, what I like to do with authors, if they let me know in advance, I like to weave in an Amazon review excerpt into the intro. Oh. However, no time for that right now. So
no, it's okay.
Anyway, is that your first book, or have you done a few?
This is my partner Will and I put this one out together, and then I put together a little pocket guide to facilitating human connections.
And often those are much more read than the 250 page tomes.
The thing that the bread and butter is actually that I created is the We Connect cards.
Nice.
Which have, I don't know if you came across those or not, but have a bunch of questions.
Yeah, didn't see them. Okay.
Yeah. So they've got a bunch of questions to skip small talk and dive beyond the surface a little bit. So I would say in terms of authoring, this is probably what I'm most proud of and is most widely used around the world.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, I mean, this is great because now we have weapons again. What I love about this, frankly, is that doesn't matter if you're an extrovert, doesn't matter if an introvert.
Yeah.
We all hate small talk and we want a deeper dive. So that is a really powerful common ground that really would give you a lot of street cred in the introvert community.
It's one of my favorite things is when after I speak, always multiple introverts come up and say, first thing they do is a deep sigh and they go, "Oh, I was so thank you for assuming the social risk for me to be able to hop into a conversation that I wouldn't have."
Oh my gosh. All right. So we're going to zip it because we want to come back to that. That's going to make for some really great content here. So, all right. Well, we are live in 3, 2. We are live with Chad Littlefield. Chad, are you ready to talk?
I'm ready to talk and perhaps listen.
Chad Littlefield is the co-founder of Me and We Inc., an organization whose mission is to gently eradicate small talk to create conversations that matter. Forbes magazine calls Chad a global expert on building trust and connection in teams. Chad Littlefield, welcome to the talk.
Thanks for having me.
Your talk is called Positive Social Risks. And this is one of the shortest talks that I've ever seen. It clocked in at just over 6 minutes and ends very interestingly because you basically have the crowd buzzing and then it just kind of fades out, which is a unique ending as well. It makes sense because they actually did what you describe in the talk. They began connecting with one another. So please, Chad, take us behind the talk.
Yeah. Wow. So this is good to rewind the tape a little bit. There's a way
It's been a while ago, so that that's a little summary of your talk.
It's about a fifth year anniversary or so, but yeah, in that moment, it's interesting. Behind stage, the 10 seconds before I went on, I would say, despite the fact when you watch the video, I look very comfortable hanging out with those 800 people. But it was probably the time that I was most choicefully nervous in my entire life in that exact moment. And I wish that Apple Watches were out back then, and I could prove it to people that I was nervous because they don't believe me when I share that. But part of the desire and what you're talking about in terms of how we're ending is the talks inviting people to shift a pattern of behavior or try something that stretches people outside of where they're comfortable. And as many TED Talks do. And I don't think that I could ask people of that without actually doing it in the room as an experiential educator, somebody who thinks that we learn by doing rather than just by listening.
Chad, we're going to get into some other areas, especially this introvert extrovert thing. But I'm really curious about your gestures, because in the talk, you had the most. I've interviewed 350 plus people on this podcast the entire year 2018. You have the most, I think, intentionally exaggerated gestures of anyone I've ever seen. Have you found that kind of opens people up? Does that get them to lean in? Does that get you to get their judger out and either give you a thumbs up or thumbs down as opposed to just checking out? Why do you do it that way?
Yeah, well, I appreciate your reflection of that. I almost failed public speaking in college because my instructor was not happy with the way he wanted me to use my hands as batons and very deliberately. And people who know me personally know that those exaggerated gestures are actually more genuine than exaggerated. Now, when I'm speaking, there is a performance aspect of I'm performing to the person in the back row. And so if they can see the energy that comes out through my gestures, then it connects me with everyone, not just the front row. So that's one intention. The other one is I cannot actually help it. I don't map out my gestures. I don't, it probably should be more deliberate actually. Cause I think sometimes if I'm trying a new talk and it's less practiced, it could become distracting. But I think for most people, I get quite a bit of positive feedback, thumbs up most of the time.
So really, the beginning of that, it does have something to do with projection and stagecraft a little bit, because you are trying to reach that person in the back row.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% of the time that I speak anywhere, somebody comes up to me and verbatim says, "Oh, Chad, I just love your energy." And I was like, that actually used to really tick me off, because I was like, this isn't helpful feedback. What does that even mean? And what I realized is actually it's a gift that they're giving me. It's a compliment, an affirmation. And I think it's in part because of those gestures. I put how I feel inside and translate it into how my body's moving.
Yeah. And it, to me, you're walking out on stage and you're making yourself extra vulnerable, because the gestures are extra big, and that could be an extra target, or we can lean in and really listen to the substance. The question is, okay, is there real substance behind the gestures, or is it just gestures for the point of doing something different? And there is a substance. And we were talking a little bit in the pre-interview, Chad, about, this is beautiful, because your talk is all about opening people up and connecting in a meaningful way. And I would suspect you're a little bit more naturally on the extroverted area of the spectrum. And, I'm, believe it or not, I'm more of an introvert, and I've got a couple of introverts lined up later in the day. And this is common ground, because the introverts judge the extroverts and think that small talk is where it's at in party conversations, but you're not like that. You're actually aligning and allying with all of us introverts to create meaningful connections so that we can, make a difference and make an impact. So I love that. Please tell us a little bit more about your approach.
Yeah. So for those of you familiar with Susan Cain, who's a pretty famous TED Talker, popular TED Talker, talks about the power of introverts in a world that cannot stop talking. And she is somebody that I follow most as somebody who tends to be extrovert. She's somebody who I follow most closely, actually, because I think she speaks so much truth and power to that world. And there's things you can contest with, but overall, one of the things that she really shares, and this is a generalization of introverts, but I have met, and I actually have been doing some research on this, asking people as I go around and speak, how many of you really so I was in Texas a couple weeks ago asking a group of 1,500 people. I said, how many of you really love small talk as you define it right now? And there were 2 hands in the room that went up at a 1,500. And so it's great. You guys chat with each other. That's wonderful. And for the 1,498 others of you in the room, we're going to do an experiment that's going to create that conversation that matters. So when you point out that elephant in the room, and then you create an opportunity to skip that and have a conversation that's a little bit more meaningful, there's something really freeing for introverts. And somebody always comes up after a talk. My favorite thing is an introvert always comes up afterwards, and the first thing they say is this big sigh. They say, "Oh, you have no idea. I'm so introverted. When you got up and you said you're going to get us into conversations, I was mortified. And by the end, I was so grateful because you made it so easy and you assumed the social risk for me to be able to have conversations that I actually cared about without needing to navigate the where are you from geography game."
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's what good leaders of groups and communities and teams, that's what they do. They create an environment where we're not battling against one another's differences as you kind of do by default, but you can pick out a neutral common enemy, which in our case is shallow, meaningless conversations. And that's a wonderful thing when you've got someone more on the extrovert spectrum saying, you know what, we don't like meaningless conversations either. We want to really connect, and we connect in a certain way. And if you can meet in common ground, I love that. 1,500 people in the room, and only 2 people actually loved the shallow, meaningless talk piece.
and that wasn't just that random group. Every group are very similar. It's always a 99% to 1%.
It's like a 99.9. That's crazy.
Yeah,
that is something. And then maybe do you applaud the 2 people that
I do
actually
and
like that? I mean, that's
and
good
actually,
that they like it. I guess they need their own community if there's only 2 of them.
Right. Well, I think actually whenever I talk with somebody who says, no, whoa, I really love small talk, the way that they describe small talk is they're really genuinely, naturally curious about another person. They're really listening to what they have to say. And I don't actually think that small talk has anything to do with the content of the conversation. I think it has to do with the process. So when 2 people care to talk to each other, I think it's actually really hard when there's empathetic curiosity present in the conversation. I don't think it's possible to have a conversation that's small talk if you have that mutual empathetic curiosity.
And that's really what we get out of your talk, because now, and 5 years later, or however long it's been, now we've got these screens, and we've got, our heads are even more in our phones, and it's even harder to connect. So really your talk is about, just validating the humanity in other people while we're still barely human before we go even further off the cliff. And it's actually very, very meaningful. And so, good for you for creating the credibility to expose this little shallow small talk thing, and then to bring the bigger point that introverts also need to hear. I'm going to pick on fellow introverts. We need to get out of our shells, and we need to acknowledge and reach out and give to other people who may be even more, introverted or fearful or isolated than we are ourselves. And that is a necessary, empowering message right there. So now you've got some tools. So you were showing me some tools that you have. You actually have practical tools for those of us watching the live stream right now. If you can show that to us, because you got some groovy stuff.
Thanks. Yeah. So this one deck, this is the one that's most popular. This is being used in 80 countries around the world. It's called We Connect cards.
80. Not 18, but
80. Yes.
Wow.
Just shipped some decks off to the UAE and Philippines and Switzerland yesterday.
How many languages of those 80 countries? English or other ones as well?
Say that again?
Other languages besides English, or?
So we're currently working on a global translations project. They're in about 6 languages, not in print. Digitally, they're in about 6 languages. Yeah.
And you download it and download and go or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Similar to that. And so anybody's interested in different language can reach out. But yeah, we actually, back when I was an academic, I used the design thinking process to really create 60 questions, because there are other question decks out there. And a lot of them actually promote small talk, I think. They're silly, quite like, what's your favorite color M&M? And when we do quote icebreakers in organizations or meeting contexts, so often it's like this painful drudgery. Like icebreaker triggers a lot of people like, oh, not that. And so we wanted to create...
It's code language for more corporate drudgery disguised with a shiny red bow that nobody really wants to do anymore.
Totally. And so,
or it's like a Michael Scott Office episode where something very wrong and very inappropriate is about to happen in a corporate setting.
Exactly. And so seeing those two problems, I was like, okay, this cannot go on in the world. There needs to be a better tool. So
I love this. It's so cause driven.
Yeah, there's the original spark for the idea of We Connect cards in particular was seeing two people interact without prompting, just watching, say in a context of a networking event. A networking event most of the time looks like a bunch of slow bumper cars who happen to collide, don't really know what to do, know they're going to not be there for too long. So how deep do you really like it's painful to watch. And so I wanted to reduce that pain and replace it with something that was actually really connecting, really meaningful. Because we know there's so much. I don't know if you saw Google's recent study, Project Aristotle, that came out of they went on this quest to find what are the characteristics of the highest performing teams at Google. And the number one characteristic that kicked out was not the perfect Myers-Briggs. It wasn't the years of experience. It was the degree of psychological safety in that team was the largest.
I saw something about that. I remember that now. Didn't remember it Google, but psychological safety.
Yeah. Which
is actually really hard. If you're a leader, if you're a manager, and you've got like and I'm not the biggest believer in Myers-Briggs, but it's great for purposes of conversation. I am actually an INFP, which means, and I've got kind of the firstborn child sensibility where I'm kind of almost allied with other people and leaders against my own fundamental nature, which is very, very sensitive. And so it's like, how do you get things done, get everybody working together, and also value people that are hidden secretly, kind of like me, and kind of easily shut down. I wouldn't say offended, because I work really hard at not doing that, but easily kind of shut down on the inside. Absolutely heroic to be able to have a team like that. Sure. So
your talk at TEDx Harrisburg was about empathy. And so I'm curious for you. I think that a huge component of psychological safety is group empathy and being trained in empathy. I'm wondering, what, for folks listening, what is something that in your brain creates that shared empathy or that psychological safety?
Well, you have to identify with the other person. You have to basically walk a mile in their shoes. My whole thing was about being armed. ARM. The first one is to assume noble intent, which isn't easy to do when you've got deadlines and pressure and your chain of command coming down on you. But I think that's really key to psychological safety, is just always, no matter how much pressure you're shouldering and shielding the group from, if you can just always assume noble intent and then, speak in a direct way and just let people know that they're valued. I think that's huge.
Wow. I need to you need to give me your address after this, because I need to.
Well, you'll hear it on the podcast, because my Talk Ninja, he's not going to edit that part out.
Oh, no. I'm not suggesting you give me your address now. No. That would be a poor decision. Afterward, you'll have to send me. I'd love to get you a copy of Ask Powerful Questions. The first chapter is about intent, and the last chapter is about empathy.
There you go. Well, we bookended it right there.
Yeah.
So that's the one that you worked on with your partner. What was the solo one? And you've got a whole bunch of these things in your store, and I'm going to let people know where that is later on.
Combined into a connection toolkit with 100 different group exercises and multiple tools in it. The book that I just mentioned is primarily written by my partner, Will Wise, called Ask Powerful Questions, Create Conversations That Matter, which, much to our happy surprise, became a Amazon bestseller and got out there. I don't know how many countries that one's in, but it's gotten to more. And then I, before that, produced a more practical pocket size guide. So if you're on the podcast, it is literally the size of a pocket, size of an index card, little 140-page, very practical exercise-based book called The Pocket Guide to Facilitating Human Connections.
It'll definitely fit in your pocket. So we've been enjoying our talk with Chad Littlefield. His talk is called Positive Social Risks. And like the Pocket Guide, it is a short one. So we are going to come right back in just a moment for the Blitz Round. And we're back with Chad Littlefield. It is time for the Blitz Round. I'm going to ask Chad a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of his recent talk. Chad, are you ready to go?
My neurons are primed.
First question, were you invited to speak or did you apply?
I was invited to host, and I said, no, thank you. And when I said no, thank you, I said, okay, we'd love for you to give a talk.
Invited to host. So as a sponsor, as a venue, as an MC, what does that mean?
As an MC. Yeah.
As an MC. Okay. Well, that's a separate fun conversation. Have you MC'd other TEDx talks or other venues? Obviously done quite a bit of that.
Since then, I will MC quite a bit of corporate events and kind of thread the needle between whether it be a larger company retreat or an all-staff weekend getaway or something. But I like being able to tie the thread and the theme and weave the theme of connection throughout sometimes boring business meetings.
Well, for Chad's benefit, so this is the automatic invite right back on to talk about MCing, because I love talking to other MCs because people don't really talk or hear about it. You can hear several episodes on Be the Talk where I've talked with other MCs, because that's just kind of a mysterious, not very tangible art that is extremely important if you're getting married or having a reception or doing your own business event or doing anything like that. It's very, very important. But back to the Blitz Round. Chad, are you a memorizer, improviser, or a blender?
I memorized it so much that I threw the whole thing aside and I got on with a blank slate. And so it was in my body by the time I stepped on, but I don't think I had a word of it in my head.
Yeah. So I almost think I need to add a fourth word, internalizer, because that's when you can jump on and that's when the magic happens. If you don't memorize it quite well enough, you're not an internalizer. You're, I don't know what that is, but that's you've had an experience. You've learned something. We'll say it that way. Chad, what is a tip, tool, or technique that helped you?
So if you see the talk, I use visual space a lot. And so I actually have a series of boxes set up on the stage to form a wall, and I use a hoop to represent these 3 different zones that I'm talking about. And as I'm talking, I move through those zones. And our puny little 8-pound blocks can only take in so much information. And if you chunk it together, it helps. And so I try to really chunk it by space. So when I talked about comfort zone, I was standing inside that hoop. When I talked about the anxious bump, I was stepping over the box wall that was supposed to represent that. So use space and be visual, not on a PowerPoint, would be the takeaway.
Chad, what was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during or right before your talk?
Well, all speakers know the green room is the most high anxiety place on the planet. Like green rooms need to be the opposite of open offices, right? They need like walls with their own little space so that other people's anxiety doesn't leak onto yours. I would say afterward, I had somebody come up to me and share this, and it's confidential enough that I don't actually feel comfortable sharing. But essentially, they said, I have lived my life for the past 18 years with intense social anxiety. And in this talk, you actually, at the end, you got us to interact and connect, and your framing has completely shifted my view. And I can't explain it, but that anxiety that I felt for the last 18 years feels lifted.
Wow. So
Like,
we've been
6 minutes.
Powerful stuff. We've been enjoying our Blitz round with Chad Littlefield. His talk is called Positive Social Risks. You want to check out what Chad has been talking about, all of the bundles and the packets and the cards and everything else. You can go to me and dot. Did I say? I didn't say that right. We and dot me. We and dot me. As well as you can go to chadlittlefield.com to find out more about that. You can also go to bethetalk.com. I'll have a link to his websites as well as his TEDx talk. And we'll be right back with Chad Littlefield for the final word of advice in just a moment. And we're back with Chad Littlefield. What's your final word of advice for us?
My final word of advice is, if you are asking people to think or do something differently in your talk, you need to practice it yourself on stage, and people need to see you practicing it.
Chad Littlefield, thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
It was an absolute blast. Thanks, Nathan.
And that's a wrap. Hey, that was a lot of fun.
That was fun. Thank you. You've got this system set up, man. This is lovely.
Yeah, it helps. And when you have up to 10 people coming on in a morning back to back, you better have a system.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually do have the system, but then you try to make it fun and personable and everything else for everyone. So I've got a new round of people coming at 10. And we got Sandy here in the green room. And Chad, if you'll come back on some point in time, then that will be awesome, because I want to pick your brain on being an MC.
Would love to chat about it.
They actually brought me back. I was the last one off the stage at TEDx Harrisburg 2 years ago because I closed. And then I had a little bit of a surprise coming back from a vacation, and I had already bought my ticket to support them, even though I'm a couple hours away. And the organizer's like, "Hey, you want to MC?" I'm like, "Whoa, like you are in a tough spot." It's kind of a little bit like that. So then I'm MCing and MC'd my brother's wedding reception last year. So I've just been doing more and more MCing, and that's the kind of thing, man. Doesn't matter if you're the MC, if you're the organizer, if you're the producer, if you're a sponsor, it's like the sound person in the back of the room. You don't know they're there. You don't really think about them until there's something very, very wrong and it's too late. So yeah. I'd love to hear, your thoughts on this. So where are you MCing here? It sounded like you were about to get going.
I'm packing a bag. I'm actually speaking. I'm doing a 7 speaking engagements in 7 days, which is not a healthy cadence. But I leave.
That sounds fun.
It is going to be fun.
Yeah.
One of them I'm very curious about. It's a very secretive place that I can't disclose where I'm working, which is kind of fun.
Oh, cool. Oh, what a cool thing is that? Well, great. Chad, thank you so very much. I'm going to escort you back to the green room. And
sounds good.
Thank you for joining us today.
Chatting MC another time.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Cheers.
All right. Sandy, how are we doing today? Hey, Sandy. Matt, how are you?
Good.
Awesome. We've been having a little bit of tech issues with Sandy's feed, so we're going to give her another shot here.
Sure.
Still don't hear me?
That's a female voice.
Hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. We got that to work. I love it.
Oh my God. I've been troubleshooting with Be Live for the last half hour.
Yeah, I'll send them a little nasty gram about that.
I never have audio problems. I've used Be Live so many times, and
have you?
Yeah.
Oh wow. So you're you're on this platform all the time.
I am.
Yeah. It just visually, it looks so wonderful. And then occasionally, like 1 out of 10 people really have problems with it. And then that's not good with me. So I'm about to actually transfer over to a different platform because the social hit, I can't afford that when I've got so many guests coming on and, the deterioration of quality or tech issues or whatnot.
Yeah, I've had that too.
Yeah. So good. Well, we have success and we have Matt right here. Matt, over to you just for a moment. We have a little bit of a time sensitive issue with you. Am I correct, or is that someone else?
Yes, but I'm good for about the next hour.
Awesome. Okay. So you showed up early and you're actually helping me bridge the gap to the 10 o'clock hour here, which is great. So Sandy has been awesome, and she's been here since 8:30 trying to get this Be Live thing to work. Matt, what I'm going to do is escort you over to the green room, and you'll be able to check out how this works and just follow Sandy's lead here. So we're going to walk you over there. And Sandy, awesome.
Hello.
Now, is it Weiner? Is it Weiner? How do we pronounce your last name?
Weiner.
Weiner. Okay. And here we go. Sandy Weiner, founder of Last First Date. That's exactly what I did with Chad. Said me and we instead of we and me. Sandy Weiner, founder of Last First Date, is devoted to helping women over 40 achieve healthy, toe-curling, epic love. An internationally known TEDx speaker, love coach, author, and retreat leader, Sandy wants you to go on your last first date. How awesome is that? I thought I put that on there. Okay, we are good. I went through life like a Tootsie Roll Pop, and your website is lastfirstdate.com. All right. Very good. Any questions for me before we hit the recorder here?
No, I'm ready to go. I've been ready for a long time.
Yes, you sure have. You sure have. You get the tenacity award here today.
All right.
Awesome. All right. Well, we are live in 3, 2. We are live with Sandy Weiner. Sandy, are you ready to talk?
I'm so ready.
Sandy Weiner, founder of Last First Date, is devoted to helping women over 40 achieve healthy, toe-curling, epic love. An internationally known TEDx speaker, love coach, author, and retreat leader, Sandy wants you to go on your last first date. Sandy Weiner, welcome to the talk.
Thank you.
Your talk is called I Went Through Life Like a Tootsie Roll Pop. And I'm just going to say, hey, fortunately, at least in my case, I wanted to get hitched before I was 40, and I barely made it. I think I got married in my, almost mid 30s, and that was a little late for me. I know a little bit of how lonely that can be, especially if you're a Valentine's Day baby like me. And I remember my sister at the time, my sister now, but at the time she was kind of single, and we went out for pizza on my birthday, which was Valentine's Day. And it was just kind of lonely and a little not so fun for either one of us, even though she was trying to help. We were trying to help one another out. So I love what you are doing. Your talk is called I Went Through Life Like a Tootsie Roll Pop. And you were able to switch that. So you were able to go from being hard on the outside to being soft on the outside. Sandy, please take us behind the talk.
All right. So this talk actually was inspired by somebody I dated after my divorce, who said, I'm like a Tootsie Pop. I'm tough on the outside and I'm soft and mushy on the inside. And I thought,
now, was that a compliment or was that not so much of a compliment? What was the spirit in which that was offered?
Well, he was talking about himself. He said, I'm like
okay.
He was like, I'm this tough guy, but I'm really soft on the inside. And I thought that's what I'm looking for in a man. I'm looking for this like macho tough guy who's really soft on the inside. And then I had this epiphany that I am that person too. And it's actually not a good thing. And I started thinking about like how I got here. And it really was that all the experiences I had in dating I just started building up walls. And instead of internalizing and growing, I became harder and harder. So I became super sarcastic, and I didn't share my deepest thoughts because I was afraid. And so I had a relationship with somebody that I speak about in the talk that ended in, it was just platonic. I thought it was moving in a direction that was going to be like the love of my life. And when that ended, I shut my heart down for good and ended up meeting somebody who was in love with me. And I thought that was enough. He had some of the values I was looking for, and I thought that would keep me safe. And it didn't. And I stayed for a very long time. And then when I got divorced, I became a dating coach because I had these awarenesses that other people didn't have. And I wanted to really help other women to soften themselves, to really be able to get strong on the inside, which I like the Heath Bar approach to dating, which is tough on the inside because you have to know who you are, your values, and then you can soften on the outside.
Well, I think this is great, and yeah, you're the perfect person to be walking other people through this, just because of going through all the range of not just emotions, but it's really a mindset thing. And so, anyone in the TEDx speaker world who's talking to others or watching other talks or going to events, we know that there's this kind of mindful approach where we can be judgmental and certain and right, at least in our own mind, or we can open up and be perceptive, and we can be curious, and we can view everything as a learning experience, no matter how painful it is. And I just think that's very interesting and helpful that you have enjoyed both mindsets, and you're kind of harvesting the best out of both mindsets. And you mentioned the in the talk, as well as you just alluded to it right now, Sandy, that you thought you found the right person, and then the person was actually engaged. He was actually off the market, and it was totally platonic, but you kind of missed it. My question is, was it in part because of kind of your certain attitude, and you convinced yourself maybe of a feeling, and it turned out to be wrong, and you weren't as open and curious, or maybe some other reason? Did that play into that mistake or misjudgment, in your opinion?
I think it's partially that, and I definitely didn't know how to speak up. I didn't know how to ask for what I wanted. So I never had a conversation with him about where are we going? Hey, what's happening here? And when he invited me over for dinner and cooked me like a 4-course meal and gave me a full body massage, I thought, this is it, right? Like, who wouldn't think that? So
guys out there, that's going to be a mixed signal, even if you are engaged to somebody. That as a guy, I'm telling you, that's a massively mixed signal.
Well,
that is not usual, but go figure.
He got engaged a few months later, but he was seeing somebody seriously at the time. And years later, I have to say that I found out we became friendly with this couple. I mean, he was one of my closest friends, and then we didn't speak for a long time. When I got married, my ex-husband really connected with this guy at synagogue, and he used to sit next to him, and he was like, I want to invite this couple over. And I'm like, I don't really want them in my house, but okay. And we became close friends. And years later, his wife said to me that the reason that he ended up dating her was because she had a big mouth, and she asked for it. So what happened was they got set up on a date, and they were set up at a wedding. And he took her back to her hotel, and he drops her off in the taxi. He said, look, if you're ever visiting New York again, look me up. So that was his persona. It was like not really being aggressively pursuing women. And she went back to the people who set her up, and she said, listen, I really like this guy. I want to marry him. He had that effect on women. And that's how she ended up with him. So that was the first thing.
So this is, and now I'm backing up, because she was set up for a date and then set up for a wedding, but not at the same time. So this was the date. This was the date that wouldn't have gone very well if your female friend hadn't spoke up and become very intentional.
Well, actually, they were set up to meet at the wedding. So he was
Oh,
driving
at
her
someone
back
else's.
to her
Okay.
hotel. Yeah, so they
That
had
was a little
mutual
confusing.
friends. Yeah, no, it's a little confusing. But the point was that she was much more assertive. She knew what she wanted and she asked for it. And it took me a very long time to get there. The other thing that she shared with me that was another epiphany was years later, she said, I asked him why he never dated you, because he used to talk about me all the time with her. And he said that I was harsh. And that was, yeah, hello, connect the dots. I was harsh. So he didn't see the warmth. He didn't see who I was underneath because of all the guards. So it's really important that we do the inner work so that we're not walking around with armor, because nobody wants to break through the armor anymore, especially when you date when you're older. It's like nobody's got time for that.
Well, hey, Talk Universe, if that's it, really, that's all of us. We all, it doesn't matter if we're single, married, whatever, we should all be working on some of the more prickly parts of ourselves. And Talk Universe, if that's you, even in part, I want to encourage you, listen to Sandy, learn from her, and let this be helpful interview for you. And Sandy, what was some of the deep work that you had to do on yourself to really transform and really almost do the switcheroo, because you were hard on the outside and tender on the inside. Now all of a sudden you're more tender on the outside and you have a good solid core on the inside. So what was the turning point for you?
So the solid core is the key word here. I had to get clear about who I was, what my values were, what I stood for. Because if you don't stand for anything, you stand for everything and you stand for nothing at the same time. And people just basically you're living somebody else's life and not your own. And my divorce really was the catalyst for that. And so I went to coaching school and I learned what my core values were. And then you take a stand for those values. And so I actually have a new website it's in process right now, and it's a whole new business called The Woman of Value. And the Woman of Value is really what I ascribe to be and also what I teach women to be. And the motto is show up, stand up, speak up. So you show up in your full glory with your core values. You stand up for those values. You take a stand, you set boundaries, you learn how to do that with grace. And you speak up, you learn how to speak not only for yourself, but, get up on a stage, do things that are scary.
Well, we've been enjoying this conversation with Sandy Weiner. Her talk is called I Went Through Life like a Tootsie Roll Pop. And we're going to be right back with Sandy Weiner in just a moment for the Blitz Round. And we're back. It's time for the Blitz Round with Sandy Weiner. Her talk is called I Went Through Life Like a Tootsie Roll Pop. And I'm going to ask Sandy a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of her recent talk. Sandy, are you ready?
I'm so ready.
Were you invited to speak or did you apply?
It was a kind of a combination. It was a bizarre situation. I walked with a friend every day, and she had never heard of TED Talks. And so the day before, I mentioned a TED Talk that I loved, and the next day, she sees her friend is having this TEDx conference and is looking for guests. And so she connects us on a Facebook message. The woman says, "What are you passionate about?" I tell her. She goes, "Okay, you're in. You just fill out this application." So it was kind of bizarre, and it wouldn't have happened if my friend didn't have TED on her radar.
And it wouldn't have happened if you hadn't educated your friend about what TED was,
Yes.
and she had the connection all along. That's pretty. That's one of the more near miracle stories that I've heard. Awesome. Hey, folks, you gotta just get aware and get intentional, and magic can happen. Sandy, are you a memorizer, improviser, or blender?
I'm a blender. Mostly memorizer, and I'll tell you that TEDx talk was the first time I really spoke on a stage.
Really?
So, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I'm a backwards speaker. So I kind of, you have ready, aim, fire. I'm more like fire, aim, ready. I have the passion and I want to do it. And then I go, what the hell am I going to do? And so I was,
which is what we all,
right. So I think we
which
all,
is why that's so important.
it's important to do things before you're ready. But so I freaked out, and then I got support. I joined Toastmasters, and I hired a speech coach because I didn't even know how to write a speech. But I was determined to do it well.
Awesome. And kudos for you for hiring the right coaching and getting part of the right community for you. Sandy, what was the most painful part of your talk to cut out?
I think for me, it was more about focus. I tend to connect everything. I just that's part of the story too. And so for me, what my speech coach really helped me with was, you have a theme: Tootsie Roll Pop, Tootsie Pop, Tootsie Pop. Like, it's just filter through the Tootsie Pop, and I'm going, no, that's stupid. But it's not stupid. It's what people need to hear. So that was the biggest learning, I think, for me.
Yeah. So, I mean, cutting things out, honing, getting back to the point, it all fits under that umbrella for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. Sandy, what was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during or right before your talk?
I would say, I don't know about strange, but it was surprising to me how little most people prepared for the talk. And a lot of people came dressed terribly, giving speeches that were way too long. It was like they were teaching a class and hadn't really prepared. And it actually gave me more confidence because I'm like, wow, I'm so prepared and I'm going to do much better than I think.
So that leads me to surmise that this might have been the inaugural TEDx event right there.
Yeah.
They had never done one of these before. So that increases your chances of getting accepted or invited to speak. However, I always counsel people, it's like applying to a job or Ivy League school versus community college or whatever. Your percentages and your likelihood is a lot different depending on what kind of events that you're applying to. But in your case, oh my gosh, that was your first opportunity to speak. Kudos for you for hiring a coach and writing that script out and doing all the things you did, because now you have a TEDx talk.
Yeah, no, I'm so grateful.
Well, we've been enjoying this conversation with Sandy Weiner. Her talk is called "I Went Through Life Like a Tootsie Roll Pop." And you can find out more information about Sandy by going to our website, Be the Talk, in our show notes page. We will have a link for you to watch this talk, and we will have another link to Sandy's website, lastfirstdate.com, as well as the other one that's about to be released, which is
thewomanofvalue.com.
thewomanofvalue.com. So we will have both in there, and we will be right back with Sandy Weiner for the final word of advice. And we're back with Sandy Weiner. It is time for the final word of advice.
Get support. You don't have to do this alone. And especially if the option is to freak out and quit, getting support is so important. And now that I've had support, I know how to support other people. And so I've become a mentor to so many people who are speaking, because I love watching people overcome fear and take those risks, because that's how we grow and become bigger and become who we're meant to be.
Well, Sandy Weiner, thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so very much.
All right. Thank you. I'm glad it worked.
We finally got it. Matt, how was that?
It was great. It was great.
We're bringing Matt back on. You hear that loud and clear, Matt?
I do. Yeah, that went great. Well done, Sandy.
Thank you. Hi, Matt. Good luck with yours.
Thank you very much.
We're going to have a lot of fun here. So we're in really good shape right now. We've got Matt. I saw Kemi pop into the green room for just a moment. See you, Sandy. I'm going to walk you back to the green room. And Michael, I see you, but I don't see you, but let's see if we can hear you. So we're going to bring you on, Michael. Michael, can you hear me okay? Michael. We will try again. And Kemi has come back. which is good. So we're going to say hi to Kemi. Kemi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Now I'm hearing a horrible feedback of my voice. So you might want to run the app again, because this is very, very strange.
On my part?
Yeah, on your part. Matt, are you hearing that, or is that just me?
I hear it as well, and it started as soon as you joined. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're having little Be Live issues today. Other people are. It's not a big deal. Just I would suggest just reboot and reinstall, and we're going to be interviewing Matt, and then we've got Michael who keeps popping in and out of the green room, and now it's just the two of us here, Matt. So we are. It's a volatile day, but everybody's showing up.
It's set up right now.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. So you know what? I see Michael again in the green room. We're gonna try that out when it is his turn. And I'm getting a low battery announcement on my recorder. So we're gonna just do a little bit of chit chat here. As how analog can you get? This is digital, but it's analog because this is. It's like I got
to analog at some point.
It really almost is analog, because not only do I have to manually replace these batteries, but I got this SD card, and the first few times that I did this, I never thought it doesn't have like a Bluetooth, so I can't beam it. I have to physically take something out, shove it in the drive, and I'm just like, oh, that's so. After you do about 10 or 12 of these or 15 in a day, you're just like, can't I just beam it, week after week? You're like, can't I just beam it over?
No,
if you get so lazy, which is so much
no matter
fun.
How digital things get, there was a Microsoft Azure data center went down a couple of months ago because of a thunder without its air conditioning, and the entire place overheated in about 3 minutes.
Oh,
so the simplest things can cause
my gosh,
significant issue.
Well, I mean, that is that's hardcore, because that stuff heats up very quickly.
And it ran an entire region. I think the entire
earbuds. That's going to help the audio quality of what we're about to do, just because even talking with you, Matt, when you're talking to me, there's a little bit of my stuff that's bouncing back, and it's kind of competing with you as well. So if you can plug that in. Yeah. What's the temperature of a database center without air conditioning when it shorts? I mean, are we talking 130 degrees?
It goes north of 100 within minutes, and then all equipment knows to shut itself down to avoid overheating. So,
oh my
gosh. There. Well, let me try this and see. Different pair.
All right. And, Michael, I am going to bring you up just to see if we can hear you. I can't see you, but I'm hoping we can hear you. So, Michael, can you hear me? I'm bringing you up, my friend. Still nothing. Okay. Well, see, folks watching this on Be Live, I'm just trying to do a number of different things before we actually hit the recorder for the podcast episode. And I will mention, if you have any comments or things like that while we are recording, please go ahead and shoot those comments, and I'll display them from time to time as we can. We might even have a little bit of Q&A time if we have time for that on the back side, which is always a good thing that we can do. So feel free to do that. Let's see, Matt, how are we doing with the...
Yeah, I'm not finding
any. Okay, so we'll just work with what we have.
So I just turned the volume down for you. Hopefully that will help.
Okay, yeah, and it's we can understand what you're saying. It's definitely B quality, not A, but hey.
Well, can I come in through another device?
No. You could, I mean, through your phone or something, but
Yeah, let me see what I can find. If
you want to do that? All right. Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to come back to Kemi, who is waiting. Yeah, people ask why. Are you just kind of this on some kind of massive power trip, Nathan? That you have all these people at the same. Well, maybe, but it's really so that we can be very agile and adept from one person to another. So, Kemi, how are we doing?
Good. Do I sound better?
You sound so much better.
Okay.
Oh my
Okay,
gosh. There isn't
God.
this. It was almost like a beyond Darth Vader crackly
really? Wow.
feedback, after I was done. So what we're going to do with you, Kemi, if you can just kind of frame your head a little bit and actually pull your laptop or whatever you have just a little bit so that we're about even right there. That's great. That's so much better. And then just be mindful. Try not to lean back because then you kind of shrink a little bit. And I'm trying to match your height. So I'm even gonna, I don't know if you can see what I'm doing, but we're in a split screen and we're about equal right now. So I have a thing about, especially when women come on my show, I don't want to be sitting higher than the women on the split screen. Because that's really bad opticals, and the times that we're in, we're definitely equals. And on Be the Talk, we absolutely are. Fair enough.
Yep.
So enough said about that. So let's get your name tag up there, and let's work on your bio here. Sorinmade.
Oh, it's actually Sorinmade.
Sorinmade. That's why I asked. It's question number one. Sorinmade. Okay. Sorinmade. And all right. Kemi Sorinmade is an engineer turned quality professional and leadership coach and trainer. Kemi offers leadership development, coaching, and training to individuals and organizations who want to achieve better results. And your website is thegrowthstudio.com, thegrowth-studio.com. I'm gonna make my little Excel thing a little bit wider so I get that the right way. And your talk is called Introverted Passion, Extroverted Success. Anything that I need to change about any of that?
No, that's
all right.
All correct.
Kemi Sorinmade. Sorinmade.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. I'm just practicing because if I don't practice, I'll have 3 different versions sometimes if I'm not intentional, and that's not good hosting for sure. All right. Any questions for me before we go live on the recording?
No.
All right.
You said to come, not prepared, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and here's the funny thing. We just had just about 30 minutes ago, we had Chad Littlefield, who is an extrovert. And he helps us introverts and extroverts get past the small talk and actually connect. And I've got you. I've got my prior guest, Sandy, who we were talking to, and it's all about introversion stuff. So this is great. So we started out with a little bit of the extrovert talk universe, and now we're going to talk introversion, which is one of my favorite things because I'm actually an I on the Myers-Briggs. But on a good day, when I'm feeling really safe, I turn into an E. But usually I don't feel safe, and I'm not in my normal environment like Be the Talk podcast that I completely control. And so I become much more proportionately introverted to the lack of control that I feel.
Yeah.
Everywhere else.
That's the way it is for most people.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah. That's
my gosh. Well, go figure. And I'm going to catch up on the chat. One of my guests is saying, "Can anyone help me figure out how to get sound and video?" Can't do that because I'm interviewing, and hopefully we will have some progress right there. I'm getting Chrome to do it now. Okay, so that's one of my future guests. Keep persistent. See, and Kemi is the second person to have some significant audio issues, and it got better when she rebooted and just launched up. So we're good to go. All right, thank you, Kemi, for for letting me do all of that. All right, so we are live in 3, 2. We are live with Kemi Sorinmade. Kemi, are you ready to talk?
Yes, I am.
Kemi Sorinmade is an engineer turned quality professional and leadership coach and trainer. Kemi offers leadership development training and coaching to individuals and organizations who want to achieve better results. Kemi Sorinmade, welcome to the talk.
Thank you, Nathan. Thanks for having me.
Your talk is called Introverted Passion, Extroverted Success. And the quote that I got number one out of your talk is, quietness is my strength, not a weakness. And you have all kinds of great stories about growing up, I believe, in Nigeria, coming over to the United States, at one point getting out of your shell enough to people who are more faith-based people would recognize this as what we call a worship leader in your faith center. And that takes a lot of extroversion. That takes a lot of guts. Given a TEDx talk takes a lot of guts. And you have definitely turned the corner on bringing your gifts of introversion into a world that is usually very extroverted. So Kemi, please take us behind the talk.
The talk came about while I'd started my business, and I've been mentored by different people. And one of my mentors, I joined her Facebook group. And one of the things I've done as a leadership coach and trainer is one of the ways I get my business is through speaking. So part of my day-to-day activities is looking for speaking engagements. And I found this TEDx talk where in TEDx Erie that was being published, and we were asked to apply. But what I did was I sent the link to the Facebook group and asked, does anyone want to talk at this TEDx talk? And my mentor was like, why don't you apply to the talk? I'm like, who, me? Apply to that talk? Okay, what am I going to talk about? And she said, just share your story. And she already knew about the fact that I was an introvert, that I had issues being an introvert, and just my story of how I became an introvert and started my business. And she said, why don't you talk about your story? And she actually did suggest the title to me also. So that's why it's good to have people helping you, people you're surrounded with that know what your goals are and they're able to push you. So she told me introverted passion, extroverted success. Just talk about how growing up as an introvert, the issues you've had, and where you are today, and how you were able to overcome all those challenges to become what you are today. So that's the story behind the talk. That's how the talk came about.
You know, not to get super personal with everyone, but I've just kind of come through an episode in my life where I realized that a major kind of relational disconnect that I've had for about a year and a half now, in significant part, was due to me not doing what Kemi talks about in her talk, which is speaking up. And it doesn't matter if we were raised in a certain way where, we weren't really encouraged to speak up, or it was deemed to be talking back or whatever. I just realized as a personal takeaway, it's like we have to grow up and we have to give ourselves permission as grown-up people to push back politely, to clarify, to speak up when other people recognize when other people are kind of writing us off or judging and about to make a very drastic error. And we have to, even if we're not normally very, judger people, we have to recognize that and be willing to step up in that moment to recognize and then speak up for ourselves, and then let the chips fall where they may. I love in your talk where you talk about speaking up. And my question to you, Kemi, is when in your life, remind me in the talk or beyond external to the talk, when did that change happen for you that you learned to really speak up for yourself?
Usually many instances, many situations, and usually, and like I said in the talk, I usually don't have to say anything if I don't have to. But when it ties to purpose, when it ties to the end game, when it ties to the fact that something is going to go terribly wrong, that is when I speak up. So purpose comes into play, vision comes into play, the end result comes into play, and that's when introversion goes by the wayside, and I speak up and say what I need. So if I'm not being treated well, if things are not going the way they ought to, if someone is coming for my children, then I'm no longer an introvert. The extroversion comes out. So for good reason, then I do speak up.
Good for you.
Yes. So again, and that's why in the talk I end with purpose and passion. So when you're purposeful and you're passionate about something, then whatever labels are placed on you, no matter whatever issues you're facing, whatever things are keeping you down, or the things that you think are wrong with you, those go by the wayside, and you step up and do what you need to do. And that is the power of purpose.
I recognized in my own career, there was kind of a shift made, and I would be in meetings or I would be in different places, and I was kind of used to being overlooked or having to be new at something. So the best thing to do is actually be quiet and observe and all of that. But then there came a place where people would look at me and say, Nathan, what do you think? You need to contribute. You need to lean in more. And it was very interesting to me, just because, most of my life I had been, that wasn't a value. So it was almost like recognizing a code switch or a values switch, and then stepping up and making a case in the moment for what I was contributing, really why I was in the room. Kemi, have you felt similar things, and what advice would you have for people like myself that are, starting to perceive more and to know the timing of when to speak up and when to offer something without going on a kind of taking everyone on a long country drive on a Sunday instead, and being very succinct?
Okay. So what I would say, and I think for introverts, one of the issues we have is that we usually are not able to think on our feet. We need time to process things. So what I would say is prepare ahead of time for that meeting. So know what the meeting is about, prepare ahead of time. And again, look at what everyone has said in the meeting. And as introverts, I'm also right now a DISC facilitator. So it's a behavioral analysis for different types of personalities. And for introverts, on the DISC profile, we are the compliant ones, detail-oriented. We're the ones who really think deep. So again, in that meeting, what you can do, prepare ahead of time, and then based on what everyone has said, what has somebody not said? What are they still missing? What mistakes are they making? So in order for you not just to talk, because as introverts, we just don't want to talk for talking's sake. We don't want to talk and just blow out fluff. So whatever fluff everyone else has said, you're the one that will bring everything to and make it make sense. You're the one who's looking at reality, and you're the one who's looking at, okay, what are we really trying to achieve here? And you're the one who brings it all together. So prepare and make sense of everything, and provide the details that everyone else might be missing in that meeting.
I wonder if part of the preparation and my takeaway from this conversation, Talk Universe and Kemi, is to realize that that's not what you described, the need to process things at a deeper level, the aversion to just kind of saying something and winging it on the spot. That's not unique to me. And if you're an introvert, Talk Universe, it's not unique to you. So this is kind of a common trait. And I think maybe preparing is just to let people know, hey, everybody, I'm really, really introverted. Here's my condensed thought on this, and it's preliminary. And if you want me to, I'll get back to you when I've processed it deeper later. But here on the surface, this is what my observation is. If we do something like that, then we're participating, but we want to let people know, hey, don't hold me to account for this, because it very well may change when I actually have time to consider all of this.
Correct.
And yet I want to speak up for myself and contribute in the actual meeting. Fair enough?
Yeah, definitely. And don't feel bad. For me, sometimes it will be like, okay, the meeting is done. We're done with the conversation. And I've gone back to think. And then I'm like, oh my God, more ideas just came through. Send an email. Don't feel bad sending an email, or don't feel bad going back to the boss or whoever was in that meeting to explain things further or provide further ideas.
And yet that's another thing in terms of feedback. I'm making this interview all about me here today, just because it's so relevant and it's a great way for all of us to learn. But I've gotten feedback from all kinds of different people who, just because they're more of the Myers-Briggs J judger, and I'm way over here on the perceiver. So that means every time I think a thought, it's totally different. It's totally refined. It's evolving. And one consequence to a judger is that it sounds like I'm saying something totally different. And I can see when they put it that way how frustrating that must be, and how they, what I really realize is that they think that I am hard to pin down or a little slippery or really misrepresenting everything that I want to represent as a person of integrity. That was the shock. So I'm realizing more and more that I kind of need to upfront coach people on what is kind of different about me and try to, because that's an opportunity for me to at least spin it as a strength, whether or not they see it that way, to have enough awareness to do that on the front end. Is that something that you kind of coach other people to do, Kemi, as well? What can somebody like me do when you suddenly, at the age of your mid 40s almost, realize your whole life that you've been perceived a certain way and you need to take drastic steps quickly to help kind of point that in the right direction?
Yes, and that's why one of my goals for organizations, for groups, is just teaching that everyone is different. Just on the basis of the talk, everyone is different. Everyone is wired different. Everyone communicates differently. And that is what I teach organizations. I come and I tell you, this person is behaving this way. This person is communicating this way because that's how they're wired. So if everyone can learn about each other, then communication becomes easy. Everything becomes, working together becomes easy. So it's so you don't feel bad as the introvert or extrovert or whatever personality you have when you're showing up the way you are. Now that everyone has learned that people are wired differently, then they accept the way you communicate and bring forth your ideas, and vice versa, and the world becomes a better place. So that is what I do teach organizations.
Well, we've been enjoying this talk with Kemi Sorinmade. Her talk is called Introverted Passion, Extroverted Success. And we're going to be right back with Kemi Sorinmade in just a moment for the Blitz Round. And it's time for the Blitz Round. We're back with Kemi Sorinmade. I'm going to ask Kemi a series of either-or talks, either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of her talk. Kemi, are you ready?
Ready.
All right. First question. Were you invited to speak or did you apply? I believe I remember the story on this.
Yes, I applied.
What advice do you have for other people to also be able to get accepted like you did?
So there are a lot of TEDx talks out there right now. It's like one popping up every day. So I would say the advice is have a story to tell, and then the story with a point, definitely with a point. So have a story to tell, share your story, and how does that story benefit? How is that story going to benefit the audience? So have a story and be authentic. And so that's one advice I would give.
Kemi, are you a memorizer, improviser, or blender?
I am a blender, but for the talk, I memorized because that was what worked for me at that time. I memorized the talk.
And you came out on stage and that served you well?
Yes, it did. It did. Yes. But usually my speaking, I'm a blender, like other speaking engagements.
Were you an opener? Were you a closer? Or were you in between?
I was in between.
What advice do you have for other people who are sandwiched in between?
So I would say relax, because when you are in between, you're probably not focused on the other people talking, or you're really jittery. So I'll just say relax, enjoy the other speakers. And even like while enjoying the other speakers, you can even get other ideas of what to do or what not to do based on how the previous presenters present themselves. And then just go up there when it's your turn and be yourself.
Kemi, what was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during or right before your talk?
Oh, wow. Yeah. During the talk, because I had big hair during the talk, the way my microphone was attached, at some point during the talk,
I heard that there's that point during the talk, and there's a little bit of contact, sound effects.
And but I just kept going through. I was like, oh my God, please let it stop, let it stop. But I just kept going through, and then it stopped, and just went on
I was looking for your microphone. I couldn't see on the video where your microphone was. I talked to other people who actually had, it was an earring malfunction where there was a jangling of an earring whacking against the microphone. So all of those things are important. Where was the mic?
It was connected through my hair into my ears. Yeah. So I think it got tangled or something. Yeah.
Well, Talk Universe, we've been enjoying, beware of the big hair when in the microphone placement. We've been enjoying this talk with Kemi Sorinmade. Her talk is called Introverted Passion, Extroverted Success. And you can find out more about Kemi on our website, BeTheTalk.com, or show notes page. We will have a link to the talk. We will also have a link to Kemi's website, thegrowth-studio.com, thegrowth-studio.com. And we'll be back in just a moment with Kemi Sorinmade's 10-second final word of advice. And we're back with Kemi Sorinmade. What is your final word of advice?
So for anyone who wants to do a talk or public speaking or whatever it is that you're venturing out to do, I'll just say do it your own way. Do it the way you know how to. People always have advice for you. And I'm not saying don't take advice. Again, because of the way you're wired, there's a certain way you show up. There's a certain way you speak. And so just do it your own way. And that will make you more authentic, more real, and people will accept you just the way you are. And for those who don't accept it, that's their issue. That's their problem. They don't belong to you. Those who belong to you will accept you the way you are.
Kemi Sorinmade, thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
That's a wrap. Great job. Yeah, we're done. Thank you so much, Kemi.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you for being so gracious. I kind of half made that about me just because it's so closely aligned with where I am right now.
And I didn't have too much of a problem with that.
Yeah, well, good. Well, good. Matt, how are we doing, buddy? Oh, I think we are muted. I'm not hearing anything. Oh, and I see earbuds. I'm seeing all kinds of stuff. This is great. Up. I'm hearing some definite finger rustling noises. So that's probably a good thing. Yet I'm not hearing. How about that? I heard something. Michael, congratulations. Let's bring Michael up here because I can actually see Michael now. Look at this.
Hold on. You know,
Michael,
now it's working on both my
congratulations,
computers.
man.
It's very strange. Yeah. It's working on both my computers. All right, let me shut off one of my computers.
Yeah. Well, we're going to jump on with Matt because we have a time sensitive issue. Fine. He's been awesome. And
that's fine. I'm glad to
Matt, say something, Matt, because you've suddenly gone mute on me, my friend. So what we're going to do is just yank out your earbuds, because that way at least I can hear you and we can do something here today. And that's not doing it either. This is it's like the gods of technology have decided to throw tomatoes at us today. Is this crazy or what? Matt, what is the time? What is the time constraint? You have an 11 a.m. Is that correct? Give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. 11 a.m. Eastern is your. That's the time cutoff. So this is lame because all of a sudden I can't hear you, and you've been hanging on for a while, and I could hear you before. So this is just very strange. All right. So here's what we can do, Matt. Are you Eastern or are you another time zone? You're Eastern. Okay. So if you can join me, I'm doing another session tonight at 6. So if you can join me at like 5:45 this evening, we'll just jump back on and we'll start with you at 5:45. Does that work for you? You're typing. Does that work for you or not? Okay. So we'll see you. I'm doing a couple of interviews at 6. So if you jump in right before that, we'll get you in and out, and we'll have the broadcast piece with that as well. And if not, we'll do it over on Zoom, which is my backup. Fair enough? All right, Matt. Usually it works the other way. Usually like with Michael over here, who I'm bringing back up, usually we get the hang of it, but we had some inexplicable deterioration of the audio quality. So, Matt, we will catch you later. Go rock your call that you have, your appointment, and we'll jump on over here with Michael. How are you, my friend? And now Michael is muted. This is just really comedic here. We are entering comedic levels of irony. So whatever Michael was doing, whatever you were doing before, this is just strange. So let's see. We've got Michael, Matt, and then Steven, who never, I don't see any Steven anywhere. Michael, here's what we're going to do, my friend. We're going to go over to Zoom. And just because we are on Be Live right now, I want everybody to know that if you ask me what platform I use, I tell people Be Live when they ask me that. And I say, please don't ask me that because I'm tired of answering that question for free. I'm about to create a like $25 course in which I answer that question and steer that over to people that ask me that question, just because I get that so many times. And the second part of that answer is I do not recommend Be Live. And this is a big part of the reason why I do not recommend Be Live. So, Michael, if you look into the chat window, I have just put my Zoom link, which will probably work. And we won't be able to broadcast that, but we will be able to conduct the interview, which is a good thing. So give me a thumbs up in the window when you see that, and I will see you over in the Zoom episode window right over there. And if you're able to, and scroll to the bottom, and then you can copy and paste that thing. Michael, you're seeing the chat window, correct? Thumbs up if you're there. Okay, so scroll to the bottom, and then I have that zoom.us link, and you want to copy and paste that into a separate browser, and then we're going to meet over there, and we're going to shut down this broadcast. And for everybody who's still watching this is part of the fun tech stuff. I think almost all of my guests today had major issues with the tech, and it really shouldn't be this difficult for people. So that is a big reason why I do not necessarily endorse this platform because so many people are using it, and they frankly, my little $15 a month that I would pay a lot more than that per month if it meant that these snafus were not as difficult for my guests. And that's what I would do. So I do not recommend. Michael, how are we doing? Are you seeing the link there? You don't see the link. Okay, so I'm going to just post that in again. And I'm going to see, you see it now. That's interesting. You didn't see it before. So you see it now. All right. So just copy, paste. And what I'm doing is actually opening up that in another window. And I'm not going to jump off this platform until I see Michael in the other platform here. But what I will do is end the broadcast. And we will stay on the line. But I am just kind of free talking here into the air in terms of the broadcast. So thank you, everybody. Michael, I'm staying on the line right here until both of us switch over there together. Take care, everybody. Thanks for sharing and helping everybody get the word out about their amazing talks.